Hello and welcome to the Seer 365 sessions. These sessions are designed to hear from experts from around the Microsoft channel and to really learn about things that we can help bring into your businesses and hopefully spark some thoughts about things you can be doing differently or learning from others, something that I hope you've done by listening to some of the previous episodes. On this episode, we're talking about a topic which, I'll be honest, is kind of one of those things that a bit like insurance, you hope you never need. But getting some expert advice from the guys at OwnBackup, I thought would be a really interesting conversation. So with that, I'm going to add the guys back on. So here we go. And well, I'll have to swap people around a little bit, but there we go. That's not, there we go. Brilliant. So guys, welcome to the Seer 365 sessions.
Hey, Richard, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing very well.
Good morning.
So, thanks, and good to have you both on. So let's start then. So, Brad, do you want to go first and talk a little bit about yourself and a little bit about OwnBackup, and then Alan, if you want to talk about your background, which is pretty impressive, I'll be honest. And then, not that yours isn't, Brad. I mean, just.
I had to bring the smart guy with me.
Yeah,
Come on now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my motto to life as well. And then, and we can just start talking about what you guys do at OwnBackup. So, over to you, Brad.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Richard. Again, really appreciate you having us on the show today. Long and short of it is, OwnBackup is one of those unique kind of animals that started off protecting SaaS data in the Salesforce ecosystem, and as business applications has been embraced thoroughly by Microsoft, we felt like our customers started adopting workloads over in that ecosystem. So we felt like we needed to be where our customers are. So naturally, we evolved and we brought our capabilities over to that side, and that's where I came and became part of OwnBackup as well, because essentially we needed somebody to forge that partnership with Microsoft. So been at that for let's say about 2 years now, and we've gone from a humble ISV Accelerate partner all the way up through Azure top tier co-sell, and also partnered on the BizApp side through the ISV Connect program. Now being led by Jared Spataro. So that's very exciting times, very interesting things with the amalgamation of M365 and D365 into one. But my background is varied. I actually I came from Checkpoint, so I was over in the security space. Before that, I was over at Nintex, and I've had a very kind of interesting career as far as my roles are concerned. I was managing global partnerships, Microsoft partnership, and co-sell, and also a solution architect before that. So know how to turn a screwdriver as well, but not maybe as well as Alan can. But good segue over to Alan now, and that's me. So basically, my perspective here is really just marketplace trends and partnership with Microsoft. Really,
very cool. Thanks, Brad. Alan, what about yourself? What's your background?
Oh gosh, well, where do I begin? So what a lot of people don't realize is I got my degree in English. I was going for a whole different vision for a career, and I just became enamored with PCs and tech back in the early 90s, and found myself in tech. So I leveraged my ability to read copious amounts of text and understand it quickly in order to teach myself tech. And I found out that more tech I knew, the better I could sell. So I sort of became a salesperson that got technical by accident. And that's how I began. And this was back in the days of like Novell, people transitioning into Active Directory and Windows 3.11 and like olden days stuff, right, for today's world. So it's very exciting where I am now, because I've taken this whole progression from a technical seller into, more recently, like a principal architect at Microsoft, and as a CIO in the partner channel, designing things for large corporations, Lockheed Martin and Library of Congress and some notable organizations, and the complexities that we're seeing. So been there and done that. Lots of scars, lots of stories to tell, and likewise lots of wins as well. So lots of success to bring forward, and it's good to be here today to be able to talk about these things that are still present from 30 years ago. This idea of data and managing, stewarding your data is still a very front and center concept that we need to be thinking about, talking about.
Very cool. So I think that's a good place to start then. So when I first met Brad a few months ago now, close friends, known each other for at least 6 months. I think one of the things that I was surprised by with backups in the cloud was, well, why do you? Because clearly it's in the cloud, right? Somebody else is dealing with all that, and I think a lot of people assumed that that just Microsoft will deal with backups and all that kind of stuff, and then I was put right that isn't the case. So which then led me down this whole path of wait, everybody needs to know about you guys because this is really important stuff that I think a lot of people don't think about, and certainly from a Microsoft partner perspective, a real opportunity to add value to your customers and hopefully make a couple of dollars on the side. But so, Alan, why don't you talk about what you guys have been doing around that, and we can expand on to. I know you do a lot more than backup, but it's kind of a good baseline to start from.
Yeah, I mean, I think the story really begins, and Brad, keep me honest here, right? But the story really begins with this premise of the shared responsibility model, and it's an education, right? So we're trying to hit the community, provide some education in terms of what this is and how it impacts customers or could impact them. And in a nutshell, what it is that as a SaaS provider, whether it be Microsoft or Salesforce or ServiceNow or Workday, whatever the flavor is, the SLA that they provide to their customers that are paying the subscriptions is around the availability of the service itself. It has nothing really to do with the quality of the data or the data as it's stored. So the analogy we like to give is an apartment complex. The owner of the apartment complex they'll ensure that you have power to the building, that there's security with a doorman, or that the walls aren't going to fall down, right? They give you the core structure so that you'll have a door to it. But once you get inside your apartment, if you spill wine on the carpet, that's on you. You did it. You have to fix it. And same thing likewise in any SaaS service, is that if the customers have a data loss or a data corruption event, the onus is on them. And this is an education that most customers don't realize. And so it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. In the old world, when we had our SQL servers and our Oracle servers, we were prepared. We had our DBAs at the ready. We had our ServiceNow tickets in place where, oopsie, I did it, oopsie with my data when I was building this integration, or when XYZ happened, or when this disgruntled employee left, right? And then the DBAs would do their magic, and a day or a week or a year later, it would all be resolved. We go to the cloud, we think that it's all gone because we no longer have our DBAs, but it's not the case.
And that's a good, segue for me to jump in real quick and just say that, first of all, Richard, loved, spending some time with you at the barbecues and the christening since we became fast friends. But no, in all seriousness, what's really interesting about what Alan just said is, coming from, being in a big IT shop at a Fortune 500 myself, there's a much different view when you have a pure infrastructure kind of lens applied to, and being on the automation side originally, the focus was always like, how do we protect these workloads and scale them across the enterprise in the context of being completely on premises? And that shift to the cloud, there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect between those hardcore infrastructure folks and the business applications people. And there's that false sense of security in you moving to the cloud and, out of sight, out of mind. And it's really for shame, because it's made it, so that customers of ours and prospective customers of ours just don't know what their exposure is to what those data failures can be and what kind of havoc that can wreak, across their business lines. And nowadays, I mean, any kind of data loss or interruption to business is a detriment to the business. But when you have macroeconomic issues like we have right now, they're even more exacerbated. Like, those things are, you just cannot have any downtime. Forget 5 nines. Like, we need just to have no nines at all. So I really think that us doing a lot of education in the space has been I don't want to say difficult, but that's been probably where we've been focused a lot up front, is getting people just kind of understand the scope of what their liability is, or what the gotchas are in that respect. But once they see it, they go, oh wow. And it's kind of funny too, not in a ha-ha way, but more an ironic way. If you look at any SaaS vendor, their MSAs with their customers all explicitly state that the customer is responsible for the data. And, we've got some great documentation for Microsoft's documentation site, all those other vendors that we work with as well, be it ServiceNow or Salesforce. They explicitly say, like, hey, uptime, platform responsibility on us, but data, it's on you to either back it up yourself or leverage third-party tools. So we're essentially that governance to the whole gap of saying that we've got a guy. Listen, I live in New York, so we got a guy who takes care of that, and that guy in this case is OwnBackup. So a little bit of an advertisement, but again, out of sight, out of mind. And one other thing I'll say too is spending some time in the security ISV space. Again, completely different mentality, shared responsibility. It's baked into everything and that entire operating model. And I think that biz apps and even modern work could learn a lot from just kind of adopting those principles of zero trust and shared responsibility, because I think that's really, really important. And if those areas of the business are going to become as critical as core infrastructure and just the business itself, they have to. So that's kind of my thoughts on the matter.
Just to kind of pile on to this whole idea of education, we're very used to this. We consumers want to be educated. We're decades into this world of knowledge purchases. But what's funny is that the student becomes the teacher at a certain point here. So every conversation we have, we're learning new things about the intricacies of this. And so, for example, low code, no code. This is a big revolution. It's not an evolution, in my opinion. Maybe that's a different debate. But it's a big revolution in how applications are developed, and Microsoft has some great numbers about what they foresee in terms of the number of apps that are going to be generated in the next X number of years. It's to the tune of like 500 million apps. And one of those things with low code, no code is what technologists, developers, the likes of us are used to, which is application development velocity. And we don't really think about data and the impact of data when it comes to velocity, but it's there. So one of our customers educated us where they're going through their test iterations. Right. So they've got multiple iterations that they're going through, multiple permutations within each iteration that they're doing in their test cycles. So their test life cycles are, we'll just say, X number of days within a sprint, with X number of resources and time dedicated to it. But a part of that is resetting the data to its baseline zero state for each iteration, for each permutation. And the resetting value is, you will say, 10% of that overall time. So when they can, shorten that workload, right, now they can actually accelerate their velocity in their application development in a substantial way. And this was an education to us. Our customers taught us about this because they're like, gosh, we didn't even realize it, but now that we can just do this table reset or this, hierarchy reset after each test, now we're much more efficient, and we have effectively eliminated data-bound false positives in our testing. So there's quality, there's velocity. It's quite interesting, and we learn more every day.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think you can have many people who certainly anybody who works under Charles Lamanna would disagree with you about the importance of low code, no code. Again, maybe that's a different conversation. We can talk about microservices, which I think will be a big thing in the future as well, with regards to all this as well. But
hey, listen, Richard, coming from a guy who was in the notes days, right, and then living through I would say it's an evolution, and the evolution has finally turned into a revolution because there was all these promises made about no code, low code, and now Charles Lamanna's team and Microsoft ostensibly has been able to really deliver on that promise. at scale.
I mean, I'm just happy that Alan Garcia has called me a developer, so I feel vindicated as a technical genius.
Hey, with Copilot, anyone can be a developer.
No,
right?
that is a definite inside joke to anybody who knows me. I'm 100% not a technical genius. But yeah, okay. So all right. So you've been working with customers. You've got them in a really good place with regards to their data. And it's funny. I've done a bunch of these calls now with people who are involved in data in some way, right? So people like Experian, as an example, around data cleanliness, and a bunch of different customers do that. So, and clearly, data is pretty much the most important. Let's take the obvious one of people to one side. Outside of people, it's probably the second most important thing in any organisation now is the actual data. So they're in a good spot. What's the kind of next step that you see when talking to customers? What you're able to help? I mean, Alan's already given a great example there with customers being able to iterate their internal development a lot quicker. But are there other areas, other examples that you could give?
Yeah, I mean, let's just sum it all up to AI, right?
Yeah.
AI. All concerns about people losing their jobs and all that stuff to the side. The reality of the matter is that AI is generating more data, and to the tune of 10% of the world's data in the next 5 years, I think is what Microsoft was saying, will be generated from AI. And so, more is more. And as a result, we need to make sure that, we're covering our bases. But intrinsically, if you think about AI is going to generate data and it's going to persist that data, but it's going to be based off of the outputs of the algorithm in the moment at that time. And so, there is always that human element of distrust when it comes to applications. And so adopting AI as truth is a challenge. So if we put in, Chat GPT, how old is Alan Garcia? It's going to give you, the ex-president of Peru who's passed away. It's going to give you his information. It has no relevance to me. So it's what they call hallucinating, right, in the AI. And so this distrust is a real issue. And so if you don't have control over that data, if you don't have a snapshot history to see it, then you can't really allow it to earn its own trust, right? And so I think this is the next big thing is AI generated data. It's going to be masses and it's going to be untrusted at first, and it's going to have to earn its stripes, as it were. And so if you let it change dynamically in place, so again, point in time today, the algorithm has an output of X. Tomorrow, this same AI algorithm is going to have an output of X plus 1 or X times Y on any given day. And if you just see it in the application, you'll never really know. And so having that snapshot to refer back against and have the analytic capability to it, that's going to help earn that trust.
And that really is the ultimate garbage in, garbage out, isn't it? Because it'll just keep on iterating round and round and round and just get worse and worse and worse. So.
Yep.
Two quick comments on that front. Well, first of all, it would be, when I'm thinking about having a conversation where I get caught, telling something untruthful to my wife or my boss, next time I'm just going to say I was hallucinating. So that'll be my out.
Yeah, I go with it. I'm just not smart enough to lie. That's my approach.
Right. But, it's AI. So it's, since it's not a person, we can get away with saying it's just, it's not making things up. It's hallucinating. But I digress. What I was going to say, though, is Alan's got a great point just about the pervasiveness of data and just the fact that data, we just keep generating it. I mean, if you look at old stats from, 10 years ago, it was like, every decade we're doubling, and then it's turned into every 3 years. And I think now the number was like, it's ridiculous. It's like every 3 months, the human knowledge and data set doubles. So data is not going anywhere. And, companies like Microsoft and others have been really, sophisticated with building long-term storage and minimizing costs around it, et cetera. But one way that we help customers, and I like to throw this out there because it's a little bit of a pitch thing, but it's a little bit of a differentiation about us as a company, is that we don't charge for the data. And I think, at least at the time of this video, and at least into, the future that I can see right now, we're not changing our data model. So we're licensing against users, which I think is very compelling, because a lot of companies and organizations out there are so worried about storage, because storage is a very high cost center for them, and anything you can do to minimize that, especially when it comes to something like minimizing your cyber risk and retaining more of your data into perpetuity, companies like OwnBackup can help in that regard. So that's a huge differentiation for us.
Yeah, I think it's a great way of doing it. I would pitch it slightly differently as well, which is the ability to forecast. So one of the challenges with, and I, for my sins, own the Azure consumption at Seer. I look forward to those emails where it's like, oh, somebody left something on, or so, somebody replicated a bunch of databases by mistake like 1,000 times, and suddenly we've got this big bill. So having that ability to forecast based on headcount, or on users, whatever, I think that's a really great model.
I think that's huge, and that's a great point. And then going hand in hand with that is, think about customers and just the landscape of competition around, say, business applications. We've seen customers move from one platform to another, and that can be very, very much a blocker for a lot of customers, is that moving from one platform to another. How do we get our old data, off of that platform, so historically we can reference it, and so on. And if you have, a capability like an OwnBackup is kind of that middleman for the data, we can bridge that gap between, moving from one, say, CRM to another CRM. So I think that, to be a little cliche here, helping customers own their own data, right, is, I think, very, very important. So it's not just a matter of holding on to that data for as long as regulatory needs or business needs require it, but also just that transition from platform to platform.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still the case, but I know at one point on Salesforce, the cost of taking that data down, removing your own data, was enormous. I mean, I haven't looked at it in a few years, but I know a while ago it was very expensive to be able to do that.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, customers are even getting creative in this world too. One of the features that we have is the ability to take designated tables at the time of our backups and have that export into your own data lakes. So whether it be Snowflake or Azure Blob, what have you, right? And so then, paint the picture of somebody transitioning from Salesforce into Dynamics in this particular case. If they have the own backups that are running on their Salesforce feeding into their lake, then what I've seen customers designing is they'll do a PCF control into the UI of their Dynamics deployment, where they can actually query against the archives from Salesforce.
Oh, so they won't even move the data across. It's just
they don't lose a thing. So it's a kind of like a project management design architecture hack, so that they have all the data that's in their lake, it's accessible to them, right? And then when they go live in Dynamics, they just turn on and they have a PCF control that's querying against the archive.
Very cool. Well, gents, I just wanted to thank you again for coming today. It is a fascinating topic. I mean, let's face it shouldn't be, but it is. And it's one of these things where I think the more people think about it, and the more I love Brad pretending that every customer reads every document, that the ownership of the data lies with them. I can pretty much guarantee that very few people have read to that level. So here's a warning to everybody that your customers do own the responsibility for the data, and I think a really good next step would be to get in contact with the guys that OwnBackup and just kind of get rid of that headache. Now, I hope you've found this interesting. So please go on to the OwnBackup website. This is ownbackup.com. I think they're a great team, and I think the business model for partners is really good as well. So feel free to get in touch if you need me to make the intro. Feel free to reach out and ask, or if you're watching this on LinkedIn, down below you'll see Brad and Alan's LinkedIn bit, so you just click on them, make contact, and send them a message as well. I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. So thank you very much for joining us today, gents. Really appreciate you joining us. Alan, especially, thank you very much for getting up so early on the West Coast and pretending that you've got coffee in your mug and got some delicious wine from Napa Valley. But it was great to have you here. So thanks everybody, and hope everybody else has a great rest of your week. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard. Take care.
Let's go.
Bye now.